May the living presence be felt by us as we read these poems from the living presence from God. So good evening. We're starting with the poem Troubled by Hafiz. Heidi, would you like to read that poem?
I'd be glad to.
Thank you.
Troubled? Troubled? Then stay with me, for I am not. Lonely? 1,000 naked amorous ones dwell in ancient caves beneath my eyelids. Riches? Here's a pic. My whole body is an emerald that begs, take me. Write all that worries you on a piece of parchment. Offer it to God. Even from the distance of a millennium, I can lean the flame in my heart into your life and turn all that frightens you into holy incense ash. Troubled? Then stay with me, for I am not. Lonely? 1,000 naked amorous ones dwell in ancient caves beneath my eyelids. Riches? Here's a pic. My whole body is an emerald that begs, take me. Write all that worries you on a piece of parchment. Offer it to God. Even from the distance of a millennium, I can lean the flame in my heart into your life and turn all that frightens you into holy incense ash. The line that stood out and kind of struck me is after lonely, 1,000 naked amorous ones dwell in ancient caves beneath my eyelids. To me, that was one of those lines that we read that Hafiz does, and we're just taken aback by, you know? And so for me, that line was one of those lines. Just the
What is it that took you aback?
Well, just the sheer way he writes.
Yeah.
Ancient caves beneath my eyelids.
Yes, and the thing that, if we're going to read these poems and get what they have to offer us, what is offered from here is we must take them seriously. They mean exactly what they say. And when he says, even from the distance of a millennium, I can lean the flame of my heart into yours. So if we take him seriously, and we're troubled, and he gives the usual troubles, loneliness, poverty, the things that normally write all that worries you on a piece of parchment. And he doesn't say offer it to God, because he's speaking for God. He says offer it to God. And that God presence even from the distance of a millennium, can lean into your life and turn all that frightens you into holy incense ash. Of course, this is something we would have to work at. This isn't something that would happen in a day. And of course, we have other resources, all of us. But we have to remember that he is speaking for the divine presence. This is a love poem from God. So whatever aspect of God, of the living presence, is a reality for us, he says, write all that worries you on a parchment and offer it to that. And that a distance of a millennium, a distance of 2 millenniums. We just celebrated Easter. It's there for us. Anyone else?
I agree with that, Brother Shankara. I'll turn all that frightens you into holy incense ash. I like that turn, offer it to God. When we have worries, when we are really at a low point, you turn to God and do meditate. It does uplifts. Life really goes smoother afterwards. And I have experienced that many, many times in my life. And even today, it's truly, I see that. Anything that frightens me into holy incense ash. Exactly.
Aren't those lovely words?
Exactly.
Holy incense ash.
Beautifully striking. Yes. Thank you so much.
Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, this is Heidi again. In that last, stanza that Heima was just saying, I don't know, I think you guys might, I'm sure several of us have done this, but where you like write something on a piece of paper and then you just put it in an ashtray or a fireplace and you burn it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what and so it's a little ceremony of letting go, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what that reminded me of when I read that.
Or those people who go to the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem,
right,
and write their concerns or their wishes or their prayers on a piece of paper and poke it into the Wailing Wall.
True.
But I like what you said, Heidi. You put it in an ashtray and you burn it. You let it go. You turn it into ash. And with confidence, with faith, that the living presence will somehow take note and lean that flame in its heart into your life.
Brother Shankara?
Yes.
I also wanted to add that, in addition to the comfort and the consolation that comes from within, as we turn to God and meditate and, lay our worries in front of God, sometimes the divine also sends the divine in a human form. Out of the blue, somebody comes and gives you that consolation and comfort.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Also, Brother Shankara, I just wanted to make one comment for Heidi's. I want to piggyback on her. In therapy, a lot of times this is used for anger. People who has so much anger, we want them to write it down on a piece of paper, all of their anger, and then read it a couple of times in the group therapy, and then burn it. Take it to the backyard and burn it to ashes so that they don't have to be angry all the time. you get it out of it. You get it out of your
Mhm.
chest and you burn it into ashes and you just pray to God. That just wanted to make a comment. Thank you so much.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to share about this remarkable poem?
I just wanted to say I really like this poem, and but if I could see Hafiz and tell him how I feel about it, I would say, Hafiz, you had me at the first two lines. I just love that. Troubled? Then stay with me, for I am not.
Mhm,
I mean, the divine is not troubled.
mhm,
And who better to stay with than the untroubled? How
mhm.
can you be troubled in the presence of that? I just think that's so strong, those lines. I love it.
I agree. Thank you, Sharda. Anybody else?
And I would just, June, you probably know, but you're muted. Can you find that magic button and unmute yourself?
Yeah, because we'd love to hear from you.
She's trying.
Yep.
You got it.
Yay!
Woohoo! Good job.
Good.
Yeah. Well, is
Okay.
there anything that you would like to say, June, about this?
No. Can you see me?
Yes, I certainly can. It's delight.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Bart, have you got the book there in front of you?
I do, brother. Namaste. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste to you too.
Hello. Hello. I do.
Would you like to read Tiny Gods for us?
Yes, I would. Are you able to hear me okay without a feedback?
Yeah,
Is it good? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tiny gods. Some gods say, the tiny ones, I am not here in your vibrant, moist lips that need to beach themselves upon the golden shore of a naked body. Some gods say, I am not the scarred yearling in the unrequited soul. I am not the blushing cheek of every star and planet. I am not the applauding creator of those precious secretions that can distill the whole mind into a perfect wincing jewel, if only for a moment. Nor do I reside in every pile of sweet, warm dung, born of the earth's gratuity. Some gods say, the ones we need to hang, your mouth is not designed to know his. Love was not conceived to consume the luminous realms. Dear ones, beware. Beware of the tiny gods frightened men worship to bring an anesthetic control and relief to their sad days. Ouch. I'll read it again.
Please.
Tiny gods. Some gods say, the tiny ones, I am not here in your vibrant, moist lips that need to beach themselves upon the golden shore of a naked body. Some gods say, I am not the scarred yearning in the I'm not the scarred yearning in the unrequited soul. I am not the blushing cheek of every star and planet. I am not the applauding creator of those precious secretions that can distill the whole mind into a perfect wincing jewel, if only for a moment. nor do I reside in every pile of sweet, warm dung, born of the earth's gratuity. Some gods say, the ones we need to hang, your mouth is not designed to know his. Love was not conceived to consume the luminous realms. Dear ones, beware. Beware of the tiny gods frightened men worship to bring an anesthetic control and relief to their sad days.
Now, Bart, I have to ask, why did you say ouch?
That one stings because as far as let's just say moving from what do you say, satyagraha, moving from lesser gods to greater gods, moving to the realization. We talk about meeting the God of our understanding and discarding the gods of the God of our understanding and letting go of the gods of our misunderstanding, the ones yesterday, years ago, etc. And so that really struck with me because these tiny gods are always for sale. People are always selling, and in terms of spirituality, it's always out there in a temptation for us, I think, in different ways. Dear ones, beware of the tiny gods frightened men worship to bring an anesthetic control and relief to their sad days. God is a narcotic, and God is anyway.
That's what those formulators of the communist doctrine, why they regarded religion as the opium of the people, keeping them asleep.
Yeah.
The thing that Hafiz stresses to us over and over is that there is no limit to the dimensions of God. And for us to judge, as he said earlier in an earlier poem, we say that moron over there, that can't really be God. You know?
Right.
This illimitability and the idea that we have that we can judge what human beings should allow themselves to be and do. Yes, we have to have social controls, but there's nothing here that he is talking about that is antisocial. And it follows so, there's such a good line from the previous poem to this one. Anything else from anyone? This is a very provocative poem.
For some reason, well, fear, that's the reason. I think most people, they like religions that have a lot of don'ts and rules. Because the world is scary and a God that has a lot of rules for them and things they shouldn't do and contain and control makes them feel safer.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, there are people who, power hungry people who exploit that fear
Mm-hmm.
by using religion to control groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
And those are definitely those, the tiny God market.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's the tiny God market. As Bart said earlier, they're always for sale.
Right? But, a God that is in every thing out there, no limitations. If it exists, God's in it.
Mm-hmm.
That's really scary to most people
Mm-hmm.
because they have to let go of so much, and most people just are unable or unwilling or both to even entertain doing that.
And Hafiz knows he's not talking to those people.
Yeah.
They're not going to find him or hear him. He's talking to the people who are awakening. And this business of doing it, being pious and religious out of fear. Christ was very direct. Those who would save their life shall lose it. Hafiz dares us to go beyond limitation. All of these poets do. Go beyond limitation, beyond the limitation of anything that wants to contain God or the experience of God is, from Hafiz's point of view, not to be taken seriously. Anyone else from anyone?
Brother Shankara, that's why Chaitanya's prayer, that those lines, no times are set, no rites are needed. I don't remember the exact, but to chant the name of the Lord unceasingly, that is so encouraging.
No
Because
times are set, no rites are needful for chanting of thy name. So vast is thy mercy. How huge then is my wretchedness, who find in this empty life and heart no devotion to thy name. Yes, those lines are very encouraging. So vast is thy mercy. That's another poem that if you recite it over and over and do the manana on it, gives you an insight into the word mercy, like the Jesus prayer. Anything else before we go on?
I just had a little vision how hilarious it would be if somebody smuggled this poem into a 14th century or 14th century convent in the West, how the nuns would just be scandalized by it. but they would also be fascinated and they would want to read it again and revisit it because they just might get it. You see,
Well, Saint Teresa of Avila definitely would.
Avalos, she would get it definitely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Catherine of Siena, she would have gotten it. Saint Thomas Aquinas, he would have gotten it all together. You cannot be what God is not. That's what he says. And God said to me, you cannot be what I am not. Now, if we take that seriously, it releases us. Now, as Swayam pointed out, as has been pointed out, that freedom can be frightening, but the fear can be overcome. And when we have the divine presence, the living presence at the center of our being, we don't have to worry about practicing license in the name of freedom. We don't have to worry about being immoderate. It simply is self-fulfilling, self-governing. Thank you, Bart. I think that is a very good insight. Smuggle this poem into a 14th century convent.
It'd be just pure pornography on one level, at the level of lower, say, lower level bhakti. They would be shocked by it, scandalized by it.
Yeah. And punished for being fascinated by it, more than likely, unfortunately. Anything else from anyone before we go on to The Sun Never Says? Okay. Ima, would you like to read The Sun Never Says?
Sure, Brother Shankara, I can. The sun never says. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world. The sun never says. Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world. Amazing poem, Brother Shankara. It's lovely.
Yes, it is.
Very true. Cannot disagree even a bit in this. Thank you.
Giving and giving and giving, giving and giving and giving, giving and giving and giving, and never having the feeling
Exactly.
that there is anything in return. Love for love's sake.
Yes.
This is such a, we hear that talked about by spiritual teachers. Love for love's sake alone. But here's a poem that
Truly.
says it in such a way that we can really understand.
Mm-hmm.
Look what happens with a love like that. It lights the whole world.
So unconditional. Sun is so unconditional.
Yep. Anything else from anyone about this one?
Well, just to repeat what Jaime just said, the unconditional love, like we've heard in so many of these other poems, you know.
Yes.
And I just picture, you know, this gigantic, enormous hug, you know, that the sun is just reaching, wrapping its arms around the earth, you know.
Mm. What a lovely image. Hmm. Yes, it's an interesting physical fact that the earth is not a child of the sun. Mm. We are a family. The whole solar system was born together, condensed out of a cloud of dust and gas. We can see it going on elsewhere in the universe right now. The Hubble telescope has provided some incredible pictures of solar systems forming. So the sun is the nurturing, life-giving member of the family. Anything else from anyone? Even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me." No. This next poem, I just love Hafiz in this next poem. Sharda, would you read this one?
Sure. Whoops, where am I? There I am. Let's see. Two giant fat people. God and I have become like two giant fat people living in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. Two giant fat people. God and I have become like two giant fat people living in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing.
I just love that poem.
Why, June? Why is it so appealing to you?
I guess it tickles my funny bone.
Oh, yes, it does indeed. We can really believe him, you know? This is the thing. We can,
but
we can imagine it.
when you come to think about it, that's really a good description of, I think, what happens to us as we pursue our spiritual response to God.
Mm-hmm.
It's to me, it's just a delightful thought, bumping into each other.
Yes. In a tiny boat.
Yes, just that image, and that tells me that God is always very close.
Yes.
and,
Go ahead, June, I'm sorry.
and wants to respond to us, but we have to be willing to listen,
Yes,
to feel
yes.
God's presence.
Well, my sense of the words tiny boat.
Yeah.
This is the tiny boat. We're in this tiny boat together. The divine presence and the human presence. And we keep bumping into each other. And I love the way Sharda read the word laughing. She drew it out the way it's printed on the page. Anything else from anyone?
The use of the word two giant fat people and then ending up with laughing gives me the courage to eat all the ice cream and chocolate I want without worrying to get fat.
But just go right ahead on.
And also you could think of with those two giant fat people, again, the unconditional love. I mean, or self-love, no matter what size you are or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
It doesn't matter, you know. If you've got that connection, it's all good, you know. Doesn't matter
Right.
your size. So
Yes.
the acceptance, the embracing, maybe there.
Yes, indeed. Two giant fat people living in a tiny boat. We keep bumping into each other and laughing. Yes. Thank you for what you said, Heidi. Thank you for what you said, June. It's, you know, but you're so right, June. We have to be present. We have to be. You use the word listen. I'll just generalize it to we have to be present. That's what Swami Prabhavananda said in his first instruction for meditation. Feel the living presence.
I thought when I first read this poem, it reminded me of something that happened a couple of mornings ago.
Mm,
The doctor has ordered compression stockings for me,
mm,
and my daughter went out and bought a pair, and we weren't really aware that there are two different compressions.
ah,
So she bought the ones that are the maximum,
ah.
and I could not get them on. And she came in and was trying to help me. And we both just collapsed into laughter.
Oh, beautiful. Rather than in anger and frustration, into laughter. That's perfect.
We were laughing so hard we just couldn't deal with it for a while.
Well, sometimes what the doctor orders is makes us laugh. There's no two ways about it. Swayam, would you like to read one regret?
Sure. One regret. One regret that I am determined not to have when I'm lying upon my deathbed is that we did not kiss enough. One regret. One regret that I am determined not to have when I'm lying upon my deathbed is that we did not kiss enough. Short but very deep. The way I'm reading it is implying that we didn't get as enough times close to God. Distracted with all the worldly stuff and not giving enough time to be close enough to God, to kiss God often enough. That would be a big regret that we should, I don't want to have.
Well said. Beautiful reading of the poem. Anything else from anyone? Someone's talking with their mute.
I was going to say that if we don't do that often enough, it would be very hard in deathbed at the last minute to think of God. Because again, the thoughts would be worldly at the time.
Yes. Triguna, were you trying to say something? Because it looked like you were talking, but we weren't able to hear you. Well, then anyone else? Anyone else have a word to say? I think that Hafiz is also speaking to us, the reader. The other aspect of the divine presence that he is involved with. I think that is one reading of the word we, that we did not kiss enough with Hafiz. We did not embrace him and accept what it is that he's offering us. Anyone else? It's gotten all quiet, like everything's muted.
I'm chewing.
Aha.
That's why I'm muted.
Okay, very good. Here's another very provocative poem. Liam, do you have the book? Would you like to read this one?
Yes.
Okay.
And she wrote poems, that one?
Mhm. That one.
And she wrote poems. Quietly, her fame spread. That courtesan who few had heard of, a year ago. Shy men could do with her what they could with no one else. And women, too, sought her breasts and came to know how wonderful touch could be. And she wrote poems and left her eyes there, for they were what loved the most. And she wrote poems. Quietly, her fame spread. That courtesan who few had heard of a year ago. Shy men could do with her what they could with no one else. And women, too, sought her breasts and came to know how wonderful touch could be. And she wrote poems and left her eyes there, for they were what loved the most.
Anything from anyone about this poem?
Yeah, so what comes up for me is a question. So he said that her fame spread and she wrote poems. So I'm wondering what was the source of her fame, if the and she wrote poems was kind of the, I guess, supplementary tidbit about about her.
Well,
And
what is it that he says about what she left in her poems?
her eyes. Hmm.
For they were what loved the most. There was all the other. It's interesting, the image of a courtesan. A courtesan is someone who is close to the inner court of a king or queen. They're part of the inner circle of the court. And we have to remember that Hafiz starts off giving us, or at least this collection of his poems is started off giving us it with Christ as the frame of reference. That he is a hole in the flute that Christ's breath blows through. Listen to this music. And the kingdom is within. The kingdom is within. And so the courtesan, the courtesan would be within. And so he says, with this courtesan, both men and women had the freedom to experience what they otherwise would not experience. And then his final lines are, and she wrote poems and left her eyes there, for they were what loved the most. This is a very, from here, this is a very heart-touching poem about what the kingdom of God offers us. Even the shy can enjoy what otherwise is not available to them. And there's no gender demarcation. Anyway, that's how I heard the poem. So beautiful and moving. Anyone else have anything to say about it at all? The thought has arisen many times that there's not one way to read a poem. There's the way that it strikes us, where we are, where we live, what we're doing. So anyone else have anything to say about it?
Something that came up for me as you were describing what a courtesan did
Mm-hmm.
was how I guess if you take it as a literal courtesan, and she became well known throughout wherever she is, she lives for Hafiz named a poem, and it's interesting that he kind of named the poem, and she wrote poems, even though I guess she attained a lot of, I guess, worldly fame, through her involvement in the court. At least that's how I'm reading it. And yet, what he finds is the most significance is, the fact that she wrote poetry, and that her eyes were full of love. Like for him, like all of those. So it's like what I'm getting from that is that all of those worldly connections and successes are unimportant. What was really most important was her expressions of love through poetry and in her eyes. That's what's most significant about her.
Beautiful, beautifully read. Wonderful. Liam, that's just great.
I liked your explanation, Brother Shankara. When I think about it, it brings out the divine, the feminine, divine feminine so well in this poem.
Exactly. The divine feminine, which was by decree limited by the Council of Nicaea, so that the Christianity spread by the Holy Roman Empire was very patriarchal. And once again, this poem would have been heretical in that context. And a lot of that has come down to us in this culture we live in. And that's why I'm so glad we're reading these poems together, because that heresy is an absolute myth. It's part of the tiny gods formulation. That's how it's seen from here. So the divine feminine is definitely, and its love is so expansive. And, well, this poem says it so well, I don't need to repeat it. I mean, I just find every line of this poem very, very touching. Anything else from anyone? Okay, it's 8:58. We have time to read one more but not discuss it. Beautiful creature. There is a beautiful creature living in a hole. I'm sorry, let me start again. Beautiful creature. There is a beautiful creature living in a hole you have dug. So at night I set fruit and grains and little pots of wine and milk beside your soft earthen mounds. And I often sing to you, but still, my dear, you do not come out. I have fallen in love with someone who is hiding inside of you. We should talk about this problem. Otherwise, I will never leave you alone. Beautiful creature. There is a beautiful creature living in a hole you have dug. So at night I set fruit and grains and little pots of wine and milk beside your soft earthen mounds. And I often sing to you, but still, my dear, you do not come out. I have fallen in love with someone who is hiding inside of you. We should talk about this problem. Otherwise, I will never leave you alone. I think that'll be a great one to start next week with. June, so good you were with us this evening, and we always so love to hear what you have to say, and your perspective on these things. And I love this story about your compression socks. I hope you've gotten the lesser compression kind now and managed to.
Yeah, I have.
Good. Yeah. Anything else from anyone before we wind it up? Okay. Oh Lord, take my hand. Oh Lord, take my hand. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may fall. Oh Lord, pull me on. Oh Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may stray. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, take my hand. O Lord, pull me on. Without thee I may fall. Without thee I may stray. O Lord, draw me near. O Lord, draw me near. Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. O Lord, fill this heart. 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 Thou art my all in all. Thou art my all in all. Without thee I may fall. Oh, Amen. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So good night, beloved ones, until next Monday.
Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for reading the poetry to me.
Yes, well, it's our delight, June. Truly and truly it is. So good night, good night.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night,
you, and
everyone.
good night, all.